Thank you very much, and thanks for sticking around. Normally at these things, it's just my mother in the front row and the rest is empty, so this is really cool. Yeah, my name is Barry Lunn. I'm the founder and CEO of LOVELACE. I'm Irish. I live in Vienna, which is why I went, and I've probably lived pretty much everywhere else as well. At LOVELACE, just to explain what we do, we essentially capture millimeter wave to enable the next generation of communications and autonomous vehicles and autonomous drones and all that fun stuff. So what we're about is taking all that lovely technology that's up in space and bringing it right back down to Earth. But the lovely folks at TOA gave me permission to talk about anything I like today. So I'm not going to talk too much about LOVELACE, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the interaction between art, and it's lovely to come on straight after Alex, who was talking about AI, and I think it's always amazing to see those guys and see where they think they're going. And look, if they catch up with humans, then there's something seriously wrong with humans. We should keep this edge. We've got to be thinking ahead, and we've got to keep humans on top. And I think abstraction and art and that is a key way to do that. So I'll go through three kind of things today just quickly because we have only a short space of time. First is just in terms of historical context, just to show that this isn't anything new, that art has been the core of invention for quite some time. Second part is maybe give some personal context to why I'm interested in this whole area and maybe what it's done for me and our company. And the third part then is maybe a couple of takeaways. I could write you a book and no one would read it. But a couple of takeaways that maybe people could think about that how they could bring creativity and art into their own tech environments and see how that goes. So we'll try and plow through that and see how we get on. So we'll start with our pillars of creation, those that went before. So Da Vinci, I think we all associate with he wasn't an engineer, he wasn't an artist, he was Da Vinci, but he defined that role very well. And I think as you go on, I think the 19th and 20th centuries especially were really exciting in terms of bringing on the artist and the computer. And Lovelace, I'm a big fan of because she was the son of Lord Byron, who's the poet, and her mother wanted to keep her away from all that, so she went down the mathematics route. But Babbage's computer, she taught it to sing and invented modern-day programming. And I think it's a lovely story of the poetical scientist. Then Einstein, I think we've all seen the fake rejection letter from Bern University, but the impetus is true, absolutely. He was rejected, and it was because his ideas were more artistic than physics. But he had that mindset, and the quite dyslexic mindset almost, of forming the conclusion before filling in the gaps. But he was right on almost everything, and I think that's something that we could, that's something that solutions-based thinking can really bring to things. Move on to this little-known typographer, Steve Jobs, and I think we've all seen the benefit of Steve not being an engineer and what that's done, because and I like to bring a bit of that into our company, kind of go scream at the engineers, just do it, let's get on with it. Steve did it. And then Tinker Hatfield, and I put him up here because I drew his shoes so many times as a kid, and he was a big influence. But also he summed it up lovely when he described the whole process of creativity. And it's when you sit down to develop something new, whether it's a company, a product, whatever it is, you are the sum of all the parts. You're the sum of all your acquired knowledge before that event. And bringing that to the page is very important. So if you're feeding in art and you're feeding in creativity, well, then that will come out in your design. So there are just a couple of the people. There's like literally thousands, and the entire computing industry and the entire AI industry, it's all built on the foundations of the artist. And I fear as we go into this century that we're losing a little bit of that we're losing the artist as part of the program. So then my story, and you see what I did there? I did like Da Vinci, Jobs, me. Classic sales technique, but a little about my story. So the artist-engineer struggle within. So I'm a high school dropout, or secondary school dropout as we call it. I was big on math, and I was big on art. And in the Irish school systems, those two didn't marry very well, so I got shown the door. But I managed to get back in there, and then I qualified for university, and I qualified for engineering, and I qualified for the art college. And my mother was either mad or a forward thinker or whatever, and she said, look, I know lots of engineers, go to art college, see what you learn there. And it was the best decision I ever made. And now, of course, nobody ever listens to her mother, so I ended up working in bloody deep tech and leaving the art college behind. But it was that core learning in art college, that creativity, that design thinking, solutions-based thinking, that I think it brought with me into a number of different companies I've started, and especially into Oralis, which again, as I say, is very deep tech. So abstract leaps and what maybe that has done within Oralis. So we were coming into an industry where that isn't existing on the left-hand side. That's an existing technology at airports in our type of technology. It's a radar system for detection, and it goes around in a horse box. Now, we need that same technology in our cars. We need it on landing systems for future filet landers. And therefore, we needed to get that into something you could hold in the palm of your hand, and that's what we've successfully done at Oralis. And I won't bore you with how we got there, but I will say it took a lot of abstract leaps, and it took a lot of engineers going into uncomfortable places, because you do not go from the left to the right easily. And design thinking and solutions-based thinking took away an awful lot of that pain for us. Oh, I'm back. And don't take my word for it, the European Space Agency recently described our technology as being the core of future landing radar, which was quite cool. That's the former Prime Minister of Ireland and the head of the European Space Agency down at ESA breaking my chips. But again, it was, it's led on to that. We're in with, 7 out of the top 10 aerospace companies are using our products. We've got all the automotive guys. And that's within a 3-year time frame. And purely that speed and all that was all based off of putting people in uncomfortable positions and a bit of design thinking. So that's enough about me, I think. They've definitely shut me off here. So let's talk a little more about abstraction and you and all of us going forward, and maybe some of the things. And I've kind of 3 ideas here that maybe quite quickly could be useful to people. So the first one is kind of idea combination. And in abstract thought, that's a big thing. Someone had to put the wheels with the suitcase, and now we have the roller suitcase. But the other is just bringing the people together and bringing, an awful lot of the time, the creative gets involved after the product's developed, and it does the design and makes it look good and puts it in a brochure. Whereas what we do in Oralis is the creatives are involved from the very beginning, and using creative processes from the very, very beginning. And I think it's really important. So you put that engineer and artist together from the beginning, and questions, stupid questions. There's no bad questions. It all gets asked, and so I think that's the first thing. Collision, put them together. Second thing is solutions-based thinking, and I'm not going to bore anyone and try and train anyone on solutions-based thinking, but design thinking, there's a lot coming out about it now. But there are many methods like the Bono 6 thinking hats that are really, really useful in organizations, because I don't know about you guys, but I know when I put 10 engineers in a room previously using some of this stuff, it was almost like a competition to who could be the most negative and who could find the most problems. And that's how engineering thinking works, and they're right. So we brought in methods like thinking hats methods and things like that, where you just leave negativity at the door, because then everyone's trying to outdo each other with those individual hats on, and you come to a much more interesting place. And I think those are some things that any company can just deploy tomorrow and drive on. And the most important one, and the big one for us, is cultural change. It has to start from the top. The bank that buys a couple of bean bags and paints a whiteboard and says, now we've got a creative space for our staff, is still a bloody bank. Okay, so you've got to have cultural change. It's got to come from the top, and it's got to be the worst thing you can do in our company is not break stuff. Move forward, break stuff, ask stupid questions. That's a cultural thing. I've been in companies where culturally that wasn't allowed, and that stifles innovation completely. But when you bring that culture into a company, it's amazing. And I'll always be, and I'm at the top of the chain, allegedly, so I'll always be the first guy in with the stupid question. And thankfully, it comes naturally to me. But you'd be amazed that other people have some stupid questions, people with PhDs in your core area, but don't get a nugget of it. So once someone breaks that ice and you make that cultural change, it's amazing what can happen. So finally, just to kind of wrap up, I think it's, if you could take anything maybe from what I'm saying, and don't take my word for anything, I think this idea of the separation of the engineer and the artist we've got to get rid of. Even this idea of the separation of the lobes within our brains, and that there's this left and right thinking, and that you cannot train the other to do different things. I think we've got to leave that behind us. I think, like our politics, and I'll quote some Limerick man from the same place as I am, the Rubber Bandits on this one, they said, there's no difference between left and right anymore anyway. They've all become the same. So let's embrace that. And I'll leave you with one last story, because you know it's all Irish people. We never stop talking about our own. But this is a Dublin lad who made a movie 10 years ago with 2 handycams and 100K. And a year later, 25 million in the box office, and an Academy Award, as you can see. And he finished his award acceptance speech that night with a lovely statement, and he just said, make art, make art. And I would encourage anyone to do the same. Thank you.
Fantastic. That was nice.
Oh,
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you. All right, so we have time for just one question. I hope that's okay.
That's cool.
All right, fantastic. The question is from Anonymous. Thank you, Anonymous. You're doing really well today.
Mom. Thanks, Mom.
How can art relieve the pains of the current global chaos? How do you feel it can relieve?
Actually, now you get me on my soapbox, but it's that same thinking, that thought process, and bringing that taking away the awkwardness from the room. I think art is really good at that. Art doesn't have to make sense. That was a lovely thing you learn in college in art. It doesn't have to make sense. You go through a process and you arrive at a place. And I think that's something that type of thinking, and I'd love to see artists. And I think, to be fair, in where I'm from, in Ireland, we do get that balance better than a lot of countries. We've grown up with this idea of, the idea of that the artist has something to say. We had Joyce, we had Beckett, we've had that. I think I'd love to see that in geopolitics. It's like, even to put some fun into the bloody thing, We're also serious these days, and people who have something interesting to say, it often gets lost because they can't connect. And I think art is really good at making that human connection.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Big round of applause, everyone, for Barry.
Thanks.